they decided to get guns involved. A Desert Eagle handgun to be precise. One of the most powerful handguns in the world. And
what it is, guys? It's your boy BlastphamousHD, and I'm coming off of probably the hardest cry laugh I've had in a long time. I saw a clip on Instagram Reels where it was showing a guy being completely eviscerated and victimized by the world's craziest special needs cat. And it was captioned over the front of it, I told him about trying to pet my special needs cat. And the clip is the cat like literally eviscerating this guy. The guy got away, but the cat was trying to eat him alive. Like, only crazy people would defend the cat that murderous, right? I go down to the comment section, and the internet is undefeated. First comment reads, its special needs are blood and fear. I haven't been able to stop laughing since. Like I was Which brings us to our video of today, which is embarrassingly dumb ways that people have died. You guys want to watch the original video? Make sure to go check out Be Amazed. They are amazing. Let's do this.
oh, you didn't think part 17 was the end of this series, did you? Ha! Nope, not by a long shot.
Why is it in there?
Because here we are at part 18, and trust me, I have plenty more stories of idiots who remove themselves from the gene pool in the dumbest ways possible.
I got some of them in real
From
life.
using a book to stop a bullet for YouTube clout,
A
to
book?
the world's dumbest terror offense fails, it's time to get the podiums ready
A book?
as I hand even more Darwin Award
And
winners
a bulletproof vest.
well-earned trophies.
I hope it was 48 Laws of Power. You know what I mean? That book is thick. You know?
More than one way to skin a bear.
Absolutely not true.
Back in the 1900s,
Never skin
bear
a bear.
hunting in the USA was an incredibly important job. Skilled hunters eliminated the dangerous creatures from their original ranges, making it safe for the humans that resided there while making use of their fur and meat. However, in 1906, one young hunter in Elk County, Pennsylvania, apparently forgot the first rule of hunting dangerous predators. While he was hunting, he came across the carcass of a huge black bear in the woods. Assuming it had perhaps died from natural causes, our man thought it was his lucky day and began skinning the animal without actually checking if it was really dead first. Yeah, as you might have guessed, the bear wasn't dead, it was just sleeping. And so when our guy started to skin it, it immediately woke up in a rage and tore the hunter to shreds. Now, I've checked as many newspaper reports from the time as possible, and details about this are scarce, so I'm not completely sure if it really went down like this. However, this was in Pennsylvania, so those are some pretty high odds.
Yeah, pretty sure they probably have.
Always ride inside the truck. There are a lot of things that can kill you in Australia, and it turns out the most deadly of them all is the Aussie idiot. Back in the year 2000 at the Spring Nationals car meeting in Shepparton, Victoria, a young man saw a truck rolling down the street at some 5 miles per hour and got a bright idea. He decided to run and catch hold of the spare tire at the back of the tractor unit, sliding alongside the truck on a piece of cardboard. I'm sure this looked pretty amusing to everyone, except the truck driver who didn't know he was there. As such, he changed gears, which sent a jolt through the truck, and our award winner here suddenly lost his grip and quickly became a human speed bump.
Ooh.
Who could have seen that coming? Oh, yeah, literally everyone watching.
Everyone. I knew that was going to happen.
Tired
Right
of
after
it.
he told me it happened, I knew it was
Tire
going to happen.
technicians don't have it easy. It's their job to repair, replace, and maintain the tires on all types of vehicles, which is pretty laborious when you think about it. However, trying to shortcut the process doesn't lead to faster results. It leads to Darwin Awards, as this next guy found out. Back in 2000 in Montezuma, Georgia, our tire technician had been working at a wholesale tire company with his brother for over 7 years when a customer came in one day complaining that he kept having to reinflate one of his tires. Our man saw the wheel in question had a crack in the rim, so he and his brother got to work removing the tire, welding the crack, then remounting the tire to the rim, inflated it, and placed it back on the truck. However, water bubbles on the rim indicated there was still a leak. By this point, our man was clearly tired, so instead of going through the whole process again, he took the welding torch straight to the rim with the tire still on it. Now here's a science question. What happens when you apply a huge amount of heat to a pocket of air? It expands. So what do you think happened when our man went back in with the torch? The air inside the tire expanded until it exploded. Both men were blown backwards, but only the brother survived. Well, it was a shortcut, all right, one that led straight to the Darwin Award podiums. Looking radiant. Now, when it became clear back in the 1940s that radioactive elements could be used to make weapons, every country on Earth wanted to get their hands on the research. The US, in turn, had a huge problem with Soviet atom spies stealing their top-secret information. The only problem was that they didn't steal all the information. So a lot of the stolen research was incomplete, leaving the Soviets with only a vague idea of how dangerous it really was. It was this that led to the events that happened at a plutonium extraction facility in the Urals back in 1968. Staff here were experimenting with a brand new plutonium purification technique when one of the shift supervisors noticed a solvent gunk was accumulating in one of the tanks they were purifying highly radioactive liquid plutonium in. The shift supervisor then ordered one of the operators to clean the tank, which is where everything went to hell. It's important to note here that you can't just pour plutonium into any vessel. There are strict shapes it can be stored in, otherwise it can go critical. Says a lot that I know this, but the Soviets didn't. And because they didn't really know what they were doing, they poured the plutonium into a random vessel which wasn't a safe shape. All of a sudden, a bright flash and a wave of heat hit the operator. They triggered a chain reaction and a burst of deadly radiation. The operator dropped the vessel and ran out of the room, which is when the shift supervisor made the single craziest choice in human history. Instead of, saving himself, he tried to cover up the accident by pouring the rest of the solution down the drain. Fun facts, drains also aren't safe shapes for liquid plutonium. So can you guess what happened next? Bam! Another even bigger, fatal burst of radiation hit the shift supervisor. He didn't survive. The operator, on the other hand, did, but thanks to that first immense burst of radiation, he suffered from acute radiation sickness and had both of his legs removed. Don't worry, pal. These 2 Darwin Awards should replace those.
Oh.
Welcome to Glasgow. Terrorism isn't exactly a hard crime to commit. Terror offenses happen worldwide every day. The main problem is the people committing these offenses aren't the brightest bulbs in the box, as proven by what happened at Glasgow Airport back in 2007. It was here that 2 men determined to bring terror to Scotland decided the best way to do this would be to fill a car with as many propane tanks as possible, then drive the car through the front doors of the airport and into a wall where the impact would set off the canisters into one giant fireball of chaos and destruction. Seemed simple enough. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turned out neither man had actually scoped out their target before driving headlong at the airport doors because the airport was surrounded by security bollards, specifically designed to stop things like, a car laden with explosives from driving into the building. Nevertheless, they persevered, hitting the bollards at speed and successfully triggering the propane tanks to explode 30 feet from the actual airport. But that's not where it ended. Both men, while badly injured, managed to escape from the burning vehicle, apparently forgetting they were in Glasgow. As onlookers figured out what had just happened, they fearlessly began attacking the would-be attackers, with a Glaswegian man famously kicking one of the offenders so hard in the balls, he pulled a tendon in his own foot. At the end of the day, only one fatality came from the incident, and it was one of the offenders. I'm surprised the other didn't die of embarrassment. Time bomb. If you're still not convinced that people who purposefully commit terror offenses are complete morons, then I have another story that will definitely change your mind. Back in 1991, over in Makati in the metropolitan area of Manila, the capital of the Philippines, the Thomas Jefferson Cultural Center became the target of 2 agents of terror. Their plan was to plant an explosive device outside the building at night, set a timer to delay the explosion so that they had time to get away, and then watch the resulting destruction from a distance. Seemed like a simple enough plan, but because it was so dark, their only source of light came from a small lighter one of them was carrying. So in the dark, they fumbled with the digital timer, set it to 1 minute, and hit the button. Now, usually a 1-minute countdown would go 59, 58, 57, and so on, but the timer suddenly shot up to 60 minutes. Huh? Then 80 minutes? Then low? What did low mean? Then all the way up to 90 minutes. What the hell was going on? Well, in the darkness, these idiots had accidentally set the device's timer backwards instead of forwards. So instead of 1 minute to get away, they'd given themselves a grand total of 10 seconds. Once they'd realized their mistake, they desperately tried to defuse the bomb, but their time was up. A huge explosion ripped through the city, but there was only one fatality. Yep, one of the idiots. Man, if that wasn't so funny, it'd almost be tragic. Squeaky clean.
Oh, baby Drano.
Back in 2004, over in Taiwan, the country was in the grips of a SARS, or Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, epidemic, which is when one woman was found by her family in the bathtub, deceased. But they were confused. Her head was above the water, so she hadn't drowned. She didn't have SARS, and there was no sign of injury. What had happened? That was when they smelled the bathwater. Yeah, smelled. Because as tests later showed, it was made up of 40.5% ethanol, a type of very strong alcohol. Now, most people think you can only get drunk if you drink alcohol, but nope. While it can work as a powerful antiseptic, it can also be absorbed through the skin, so...
She was drinking alcohol through her orifices, and we not gonna go further into the description on that one.
As this woman took the single dumbest bath in history in an attempt to apparently cleanse her very soul of the possibility of SARS, she was actually poisoning herself. Her final blood alcohol concentration was 1,350 milligrams per 100 milliliters. For perspective, 400 milligrams per 100 milliliters is considered a fatal amount. Well, at least the world's also been cleansed of that stupidity. Man versus chicken.
Oh.
A lot of things are illegal for a good reason, usually because they're dangerous. Like cockfighting, for example, which sees metal spurs strapped to the legs of two fighting cockerels or roosters before placing them in a pit to fight to the death. Giving any animal a sharp blade is an incredibly dumb idea, which is part of why cockfighting is illegal in all 50 states in the US. Something our next award winner should have figured out much earlier than he did. Back in 2011, he was attending a cockfighting event in Tulare County, California, when one of the birds escaped from the pen and, flapping wildly, stabbed him in the calf. The blade nicked a major blood vessel, and after delaying seeking medical attention, seeing as he'd inevitably have to explain how he was stabbed by a cockerel, he passed on. Well, he may not have won his bet, but he has won this Darwin Award.
Oh boy.
Booked boyfriend. Going viral on YouTube is not easy, trust me. It's gotten so hard, in fact, that some people resort to making deliberately shocking or risky content just to get a reaction from the YouTube community. The only problem is that more often than not, it's idiots that attempt these shocking stunts, like one couple who ran a family vlog channel back in 2017. Their cutesy, wholesome family videos weren't getting them the views they wanted, so they changed it up a notch and started filming prank videos. They saw an increase in viewer numbers and so figured that to get more viewers they needed to make their videos more extreme. How extreme? Well, they decided to get guns involved. A Desert Eagle handgun to be precise. One of the most powerful handguns in the world. And what did they decide to do with the handgun? Test out how bulletproof a 1.5-inch hardback encyclopedia was, by having the boyfriend hold it in front of his chest and having the girlfriend fire at it from 1 foot away. Wow, they filmed the whole thing with an audience of people watching. Can ya guess what happened? Consequences. Consequences happen.
Unconditional love in its truest form. If you really love me, then you'll do this crap you really don't ever want to do.
Happened. The bullet went straight through the book and into the guy's chest. The woman quickly called the police and claimed she'd accidentally shot her boyfriend. Amazingly, the stunt did go viral, as in the idiotic attempt made headlines worldwide. Not exactly the kind of fame they were gunning for. Losing your head. Back in 2008 at Six Flags Over, Georgia, our next Darwin Award winner was riding the Batman roller coaster when his hat apparently flew off. He was clearly very attached to that hat because as he left the ride, onlookers claim he saw it on the roller coaster tracks and made a beeline for it. Did he stop when he scaled up the first 6-foot fence and saw a sign reading, "Do not enter"? Obviously not. Did he stop when he hopped the second 6-foot fence and saw a sign reading, "Danger"? Also obviously not. Do you know when he stopped? When he was reaching for his hat on the tracks and was suddenly hit by one of the roller coaster carts traveling at some 50 miles per hour. Gee golly, Batman, it's almost like all those signs and 6-foot fences were there for a reason. He is sunken. Every year it seems that at least one person comes forward claiming they're the reincarnated Son of God, Jesus Christ. To prove it, they'll sometimes attempt one of the impossible miracles that Jesus himself was fabled to have achieved. Do they try something useful like feeding the 5,000 or turning water into wine? Nope, it's often just walking on water, which tends to go wrong as one pastor in Gabon apparently discovered. Back in 2006, this evangelist pastor apparently told his congregation of followers that he could repeat the biblical miracle and would prove it in front of all of them by walking across the Como estuary. So as everyone stood around with bated breath, the pastor stepped out into the water. Several minutes later, though, he was under the water and flailing, because not only could he not walk on water, he also couldn't swim. Now, this struck me as beyond stupid, so I did a little digging. The story is featured in multiple tabloids and websites, but didn't mention the name of the church the pastor was from, nor the location of the church, which leads me to believe this is probably a hoax. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Starving for attention. While some people have claimed to be Jesus, others have historically claimed they can be fully sustained body and soul by the love of God. Not sure the love of God hits the spot quite like a burger, but one case from 1867 claimed otherwise. This is when a young girl from Wales called Sarah Jacobs stopped eating. Her parents claimed that after she lost her appetite, they did not force her to eat, and somehow for 2 years she survived without a morsel of food or a drop of water crossing her lips. Which, to be clear, is impossible. Whether Sarah was simply lying or sneaking food and drink when everyone was asleep, no one can survive that long without physical sustenance. However, Sarah attributed this miracle to her strong faith, claiming God was sustaining her. But it was so unbelievable, a local vicar wrote to the Welshman paper in 1869 and called for doctors to investigate the case. Eventually, 7 doctors and 4 nurses were called to watch Sarah day and night to examine how such a feat was possible. So at this point, Sarah was trapped, where before she might have been able to sneak food while her parents weren't looking, she was suddenly being watched all the time. Now, the doctors and nurses never denied her food and made sure it was always accessible if she wanted it, but they didn't force her. They even worriedly informed her parents on the 6th day of this observation that if she didn't eat something soon, she'd pass on. So Sarah had 2 options. Fess up that she'd been secretly sneaking food
Accountability. Oh boy.
in water, or starve to death. Can you guess which one she chose? Yep. 7 days after the watches began, Sarah purposefully starved herself to death to prove a point, which she ironically failed to prove by dying. Incredible scenes.
Accountability.
Marmot morons. Why do we cook meat? Well, aside from improving the flavor and texture, cooking food kills harmful microbes and parasites, making it safe to eat. This is something the Mongolian government knows all too well, as some marmots in the region carry Yersinia pestis, which is a plague germ. As such, they've issued a pretty rational health warning. Don't eat the marmots, or you might die. Sounds easy enough to understand. The only problem is, not all people think their beliefs are affected by science, as one Mongolian couple discovered. Folk remedy in Mongolia makes people believe that eating marmot innards is good for your health, kind of like the apple a day keeps the doctor away myth, except in Mongolia it's raw marmot kidneys. Blech. As such, back in 2019, this couple decided to eat up a raw marmot kidney in the name of good health. Ironically, it was this uncooked kidney that was carrying the bubonic plague germ, which they then both quickly contracted and died from. Guess they should have stuck to apples.
Yep, definitely
Escalator to heaven. Now, at the end of these videos, I'll usually ask if you have any stories of your own, and man, did a few of you deliver in part 17. So, Nayana Juma, step on up to the plate. This story comes from back in 2017 in New York City's World Trade Center transit hub, the Oculus, a little before dawn. A woman and her friends were making their way home following a night of drinking when they reached the escalators. Now, according to reports from The Sun and the Daily Mail, our woman here decided in her inebriated state to lay prone on the escalator's handrail, pretending to be flying like a superhero. The only downfall was a literal downfall, in that being drunk, the woman lost her balance and fell 34 feet to her demise. However, not all the tabloids agreed that that's what happened. I did a bit of digging, and it seems this superhero role-playing happened before she fell. Some claim after she got off the handrail, the woman was playing with her friend's hat. What is it with Darwin Award winners and hats? When it went over the side of the escalator, and in a drunken effort to retrieve it, that's when she went over. Okay, not as dumb, but still Darwin Award dumb. Have you seen a story that you think belongs in this series? Then send it to me at stories@beamazed.com. Who knows, you might make it into part 19. And speaking of stories you guys sent in, losing your cool. Niad isn't the only viewer who had a story to share. Jadaish Meeks sent me an email with a story from their hometown in Kingston, Jamaica, which truly deserves a place in this video. According to Jadaish, one day a pretty bad storm hit Kingston, which flooded the streets with torrents of raging water. Now, most sane people would seek higher ground and try their best to wait it out, but Jadaish's neighbor had other plans. He and some friends hauled out an old refrigerator, which his neighbor then got in and, using a leaf blower, began to power it along the water like a speedboat. Seems like a pretty odd, not to mention dangerous time to test out a homemade contraption like this when the waters are so unpredictable, but I suppose he just couldn't wait. Jadaish watched as the fridge boat began picking up speed in the murky water, which is when it hit something. All of a sudden, the fridge tipped and the neighbor was trapped underneath it. As no one else was able to reach him because of how turbulent the water was, the neighbor's hastily designed boat quickly flooded and suddenly became his coffin.
Refrigerator
If you ever needed a reason not to
let that be a lesson to you. Always check the alternator on your refrigerator before you try to use it as a flotation device in the flood. You're welcome. It's gonna save somebody.
try using a refrigerator as a boat, that kind of covers it. For Pete's sake. Seeing how good Jadaish's story was, I decided to take a look through a few more emails, and a viewer named Baron Pathan sent me something that I think instantly qualifies. According to Barun, who lives in Barher, a small village in Odisha, India, there was once a group of 3 young men who made, I'm going to say, unwise life choices. On one hot day, the 3 had had a few drinks and, inebriated, decided it would be a good idea to go and cool off in a local pond, which was really an old peat bog. Once they got there, one of the men made the drunken decision to show off by climbing up a tree and diving into the water. His equally drunk friends were cheering him on as he climbed up higher and higher before he jumped in. However, instead of the graceful splash they were expecting, they heard a wet thud and saw the bottom half of their friend sticking out of the surface of the water. It turns out they'd all been too drunk to see that the water beneath the tree was actually disguising a thick layer of clay. And now the guy was stuck in it, head first. The 2 other friends drunkenly ran to help, but for all their efforts, he was well and truly stuck. With no one else around, this sauced-up show-off quickly suffocated. There's a lesson in here somewhere about looking before you leap, but I think the bigger lesson is, don't drink and then make terrible life choices, kids. Botched booze. So, quite a few of the winners on this list are here because of booze. But ironically, these next 2 technically aren't. Back in April 2020, a liquor ban was placed over Manila City as part of the Luzon-wide quarantine area. Unable to get their hands on any booze, 3 men came up with a genius idea. They'd try and make some of their own. Now, typically, alcohol is produced when yeast ferments the sugars in grains, fruits, and vegetables. But these guys either didn't have access to any of that or just didn't know what was in alcohol, and so made an improvised concoction of coffee, soft drinks, and vinegar. Nasty. While I don't imagine it tasted great, it wasn't dangerous in any way, which is when one of the men bought a can of paint thinner and suggested adding that to the mix. The other two laughed at him and said it was crazy because paint thinner, while it can contain ethanol, which is alcohol, also contains incredibly toxic hydrocarbons. So obviously none of the men drank it because they all had a basic, bare minimum level of intelligence and knew this was the worst idea that any of them had ever— oh no, wait, scratch that. They absolutely added paint thinner to the mix and then drank it. I got my hopes up then. Within a few hours of consuming the critical cocktail, two of the men suffered from major organ failure and passed on. One made it to a hospital just. And with that, I'm only handing out 2 awards today. Now what the heck, they could have 3. They've really earned them. And before you leave, just a reminder—
never drink gasoline, fire people. It's usually flammable and it doesn't go down easy. Always disagrees with what's inside of your stomach, which is usually your other vital organs. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, learned a little something. Lord knows I did. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to comment, like, and/or subscribe. Twisms.